Breaking news. This is your World War III update, and it is now undeniable that they have completely lost control of the situation. It is FUBAR from here on in. The price of gold tells us that they now have unequivocally lost control of this situation. At 2,500, you could say, maybe it's just a squeeze. Approaching $3,200 an ounce, the barometer for social chaos, the measure of entropy within the system, the price of gold is telling us that they have completely lost control. The higher the price of gold, the greater amount of disorder, economic, financial, cultural, geopolitical disorder within the system. And that's what we are seeing today. So here are today's headlines. The Iranians seized 2 oil tankers today. Okay? They said, Trump, go F yourself. While Trump has stealth nuclear bombers parked 4,000 miles from Diego Garcia with Iran in the crosshairs, Iran said, go F yourself. They also said that they're going to take out every U.S. military base within the region. They're going to put an embargo on the Strait of Hormuz. They're going to build nuclear weapons. And they're also going to take out Diego Garcia with some mysterious long-range weapons they've yet to disclose. They said all this whilst rebuffing Trump's ultimatum in a letter that basically said, go F yourself. Now, if Iran is saying go F yourself, imagine what the Russians and the Chinese are thinking. Well, I'll tell you what the Russians and Chinese are thinking and doing now that you asked. The Russians have fired not twice, in the last 2 months since Trump took office. They have fired more drones, and I have all the data to support this. I have all the slides. You like slides? Since Trump was elected, since January, more drone strikes than the previous year combined, okay? And they're getting ready for one of the biggest offensives of the war. But peace is coming. Trump and Putin are going to sing Kumbaya in the Arctic, and they're going to smoke a fatty at Pituffik Space Base. That's what we're told. The Chinese decided that we're going to do a big military drill around Taiwan. Yet another one, but why this one is so important? Well, the timing is significant, isn't it? Because the timing suggests, because April and I believe October are the 2 months where it's actually feasible to do a invasion or any sort of military operation around the Taiwan Strait because of the weather. This suggests that not only are they trying to attrit the Taiwanese defense systems, but this could actually be it. Remember the phrase that I coined. There are no military exercises, only World War III disguises. Every exercise, probably since 2020, had to be interpreted now as possibility for real world. I mean, they always were, but now increasingly more so. That's what's happening in the 3 theaters of war. Iran is saying, United States, go F yourself. We don't care if you have nuclear bombers. All our stuff is 500 meters into massive mountain ranges. We have a country that's 100 times bigger than Switzerland, 4,000 times bigger than the Gaza Strip, with 50 times the manpower of Hamas, and technology which is arguably 1,000 times better. The Israelis didn't even put a dent in their air defense. What did we see? Like a couple satellite shots with maybe 1 or 2 radars that were taken out? So unless they have some asymmetric ace in the hole, some 4D Grandmaster chess move up their sleeve to do a decapitation strike on Iran, they're going to walk into a trap, okay? People need to acknowledge that April 2nd, liberation, it's not liberation. It is hold on for dear life from here on in and hope our enemies don't call our bluff day. That's what it is. It's over. These are historical times that we are living in. This is an epochal shift and possibly an apocalyptic shift that we're transitioning into. And we've crossed the event horizon, and gold is telling you, I've been telling you for the last couple years that this is it. This is a conflict for global domination. And now we're truly living in a multipolar world, but people don't appreciate that term. It's far too euphemistic a term to describe the true danger of the situation. Now, somebody was buying a lot of gold today. Now, we don't have 100% confirmation of this, but based on some fairly knowledgeable accounts that I follow, the COMEX had a contract, 45,000 contracts for 100 ounce, which would total about $14 billion today, which is very substantial. This is record territory. Who is buying $14 billion of gold and why? Right? Is it the US government? Somebody's sticking their neck out, that's for sure, if this is a private individual or some kind of hedge fund. But things are getting crazy. And I just hope that everybody is preparing for what's about to happen, because it's about to get really, really ugly. In terms of what's happening with Iran, there's lots of Middle Eastern weapon shipments happening right now coming from South Korea. Just a highly unusual amount of weapon shipments. A large group of USAF cargo planes are flying in and out of South Korea. In the past 24 hours, 10 plus separate C-17s have landed in South Korea's Osan Air Base. This one prominent theory that describes this movement into the Middle East of weaponry is that these are air defense systems, Patriot systems. Now, why would they be putting air defense systems in the Middle East? Israel already has its air defense systems, right? It's because they're expecting a much bigger fireworks show. And they're expecting that the Iranians are going to be firing missiles on all fronts. Now, let's not forget that despite the Israelis claiming to have one of the best missile defense systems in the world, the Iron Dome, which of course is tuned to smaller targets and bottle rockets, and they did have Patriots, and they could barely put a dent in Iran's recent barrage in True Promise 2, where hundreds of those missiles, while some of them were off target, many people argue that this was not even their best stuff. Remember, these guys have dozens of underground bases with hundreds of thousands of long-range ballistic missiles and hypersonic missiles. These guys are not effing around. They've prepared for this for the last 20. This is their thing. This is the only thing they've prepared for. Whereas we have to kind of spread ourselves out thin and we're preparing for the last war. They have not only mastered drone technology in terms of, their work with the Russians and cyber capabilities in terms of bringing down U.S. drones. I believe that was way back in, the early 2010s when they brought down a Reaper drone and they basically backward engineered it. Okay, so people don't understand the war that they're getting. I mean, the United States, with all of its stealth bombers, can barely get a handle on the Houthis, who are still shooting down drones. They shot down their 17th Global Hawk drone today. So this is very serious. They're also putting in 300 U.S. airmen and A-10 Thunderbolts, which are Warthog planes, tank-killing, close air support jets, presumably for Yemen, because I highly doubt you're sending those things into Iran. I mean, it'd be stupid to do that. But basically, the IRGC has said it will be a glass chamber. 50,000 American forces in 10 military bases are well within Iran's reach, and they're not afraid to take them out. Iran is calling the United States bluff. They're saying, what else do we have to lose? Our population is going to revolt soon if we don't stand our ground. This is why you have the Ayatollah brandishing a weapon in his speech that concluded Ramadan, okay? And so here he's brandishing a weapon. Now, the only possible, I think what they're trying to wait for is this guy to die. Because if he dies, then there could potentially be a very destabilizing power vacuum within the country. However, the commitment of the besieged militia in Iran is very strong. and it's very theocratically and religiously charged, even though there's a significant resistance both inside and outside Iran to the existing regime. And you can tell by the look of consternation on the Iranian foreign minister's face. Just take a look at the foreign minister's face. This, sometimes a picture is worth 1,000 words. A video is worth 1,000,000. Look at his face. This is the Ayatollah talking about what's going to happen if the United States attacks them. And I can tell you that the last foreign minister, he went down in a plane crash along with his president, never to be seen again. And these guys know this time that ultimately the IRGC and the Iranian military take their marching orders, not from these guys, not from the politicians, but from the Ayatollah. And if you are on your deathbed soon, or you're approaching that fateful moment like the Ayatollah is, like any old politician is, you might just say, let's go for broke. Especially if you believe in the apocalyptic prophecies of these ancient religions. Every ancient religion has some apocalyptic fantasy attached to it. And that's one of their chief guys there. That is the commander of the aerospace forces, I believe. That's probably one of the most important guys in their military right here, this guy. Okay? This is the guy who oversees the missiles, the space program, everything. So if they're going to do a decapitation strike, and the fact that they're still gathering in places like this, despite, because I mean, really one strike could take them all out, but the fact that Israel could not even provide evidence in their last sortie that they flew against Iran, and they showed a few rinky-dink pictures, and it was obvious that it did not go as planned, and the planes didn't even enter into Iranian airspace, and yet all these shills online trying to make shit up. Guys, they have no idea what they're getting themselves into, and I can only think that what they're trying to do here is really use U.S. troops as a tripwire within the region, with the hopes that once they attack Iran, then the Iranians are going to attack U.S. military bases, and that is going to embolden and revitalize the U.S. war machine. And I'm talking full on. I'm talking World War II level of mobilization, possibly conscription as well. If you don't think that conscription can happen again, understand how fast things can happen, like how quick the shift has happened. I mean, just look at how quick, I don't know, I mean, just there's so many examples in the last year, things that were one way, now they're completely on the opposite end, where, Elon Musk, for example, he used to be the left's hero, poster boy. Suddenly, it flips, and people are burning Teslas. Just like that, right? We've seen this time and time again, where the script can immediately get flipped, and all it's going to take is a 9/11 type situation. Even if it is in a established war theater, it could have that effect. So it's getting crazy. Information received by the Tehran Times indicates that Iran's missiles are loaded onto launchers in all underground missile cities and are ready for launch. Iran has sent a letter to Trump with an official warning stating that any evil against Iran would result in Iran reacting decisively and immediately. This warning letter was given to the Swiss embassy in Tehran to be sent to the United States. According to I-24 News in Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and Kuwait have secretly told Tehran that they will not allow the United States to use their air bases to launch or support military strikes against targets in Iran. Well, why are they saying this? Because they're very worried that Iran is going to retaliate against them. Because indeed, the aerial refueling tankers are likely going to be flying over Saudi Arabian airspace, and Qatar is getting shitloads of weapons sent to them, okay? Including air defense. So why would you be sending all that stuff there if you didn't plan on them having their territory leveraged? And they really have no say in the matter, because the United States is a dominant force within those countries. And so they really have no choice. And we're seeing oil spike as well, not only as a result of the seizure of oil tankers, which could very well be the beginning of the embargo or a preamble to the Strait of Hormuz closure. We're also seeing that because I think they realize that there's going to be a wider war in the region. The people I'm listening to, the pundits, the people who know what they're talking about, are talking as if it's inevitable at this point in a way that I've never seen and never before. Despite the 20 years of anti-Iranian rhetoric, there never has been a clear path. And there never has been somebody who had it in them to do it, because I'm pretty sure the intelligence and military officials have always advised against going against Iran. I mean, even in the Millennium Challenge back in the early 2000s, they lost all the war games against Iran back in the 2000s, okay? When there was a much greater power differential between the United States and Iran. Now, it's an even smaller difference, still a big difference in terms of power to project and expeditionary forces that the US has. But again, a whale can't defeat an elephant, and Iran is an elephant. They're dug in, literally, as deep as you possibly can, 500-meter deep bunker complexes that are impenetrable to anything. Even strategic nuclear warheads can't get that deep. They can make it an irradiated wasteland, but how do you know that Iran doesn't have nuclear weapons as well? And that one of those hundreds of ballistic missiles, which will be able to circumvent the THAAD and Patriot missile defense systems in Israel, doesn't hit Tel Aviv? And that's the situation we're in, because they're saying we're going to get nuclear weapons. They've literally said it. An Iranian member of parliament, and it's not only members of parliament. Yes, he's not the Ayatollah. He's not the final say. There still is a fatwa against making nuclear weapons, and it is still considered haram, which is forbidden in Islam to utilize nuclear weapons. But you're seeing increasing calls between academics, pundits, politicians to demonstrate their nuclear capability. And of course, they're referencing places like North Korea. That Donald Trump today said, North Korea, Kim Jong-un's my buddy. That's what he said. I'm not sure if he said that in between what was happening here. But so my guys, this is a circus. This is a circus. I mean, look at this juxtaposed with this. This juxtaposed with this. Okay? This is literally the end of times. I mean, I hate to say it, but it's the truth. So this is a map courtesy of, what's his name? Schizo Intel, I believe it is. Schizo Intel. If you know who he is, tell him the Canadian Prepper sent you his map. And he's good at making these infographics that show you where all the assets are. So you can see there's a lot of Iranian warships, Diego Garcia, stealth bombers, Strato tankers, Globemaster 3s, which are delivery cargo vehicles, and PAA Poseidons, which are ISR, intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance vehicles, as well as numerous warships and carrier groups. So everything is fitting to pop off. It is a powder keg right now. And Iran has allegedly, and now this could just be propaganda, I'm not entirely sure, but Iran has allegedly pondered doing preemptive strikes on Diego Garcia, which of course could just be disinformation used to justify an attack. And even the most staunch anti-war people right now, people like Scott Ritter, who at one time, remember what he said, Hamas will destroy the IDF if they go in there. The IDF will be destroyed, he said. Hezbollah will rain down hundreds of thousands of missiles. The great Scott Ritter, who's been wrong about damn near everything. Kherson, I remember he was talking about how the Russians will never abandon Kherson. They'll never do it. And once they did do it, well, it was the most genius maneuver ever in the history of warfare. Mother Russia will be... Guys, some people, I think, are still hot. For those of you who know, you know. Because the shit that comes out of some of these people's mouths and the inconsistencies and the contradictions. And I get that the idea is that if Iran enters into a conflict, that the United States has it within their nuclear doctrine that they could potentially use nuclear weapons. But at the same time, the Iranians are looking at the North Koreans and saying, well, they're not getting nuked. Why aren't they getting nuked? And people might say, well, you know, the North Koreans clearly don't have the capability to build these 10-axle vehicles and these giant rockets and all these sophisticated drone technologies. Clearly, they're getting the help of the Chinese and the Russians, who they have strategic military pacts with. In fact, with the Russians, it's a nuclear umbrella. But that didn't stop the United States from engaging with the North Koreans before that. Why? Well, arguably, the North Koreans have a few more friends. But nonetheless, despite some drone bombardments, they haven't messed with Pakistan yet. They don't mess with any country that has nuclear weapons. Okay? And it's a blatant contradiction for us to sit here and say, well, Israel gets to have nuclear weapons, but the Iranians don't. I mean, because we're the golden billion, we're the adherents to freedom, liberty, and democracy, and everybody else is just a bad guy who is out, you know, head choppers and people who are just evil, right? Even though it's arguable that the level of industrial scale evil that's been perpetrated by the West is greater than any other that we've seen in history, with the exception, of course, of the gulags and communist China and a few other examples, okay? But in terms of dropping nuclear bombs and the stuff that happened in Auschwitz and all these other places, well, you know, we've done some pretty crazy shit out here in the aspiring democratic West as well. So what I'm saying is, the Iranians are just saying, screw it. What do we have to lose at this point? We have 90 million people. We have a country that is impenetrably mountainous. It is cavernous. We have the weapons. We have the defensive pacts with various countries. We have the buyers of our resources. We have vested interests of other superpower states like China, who won't necessarily militarily come to our aid. But you see what China's doing while this is all going on with the Iranians. They decide on April 1st, on the day when it seems as though the United States is getting ready to get hot on Iran, they decide, well, we're going to do a big exercise, right? So now you have the United States trying to manage 3 major theaters of war. The idea that the United States, and this is not throwing shade on U.S. people, I get it, it's the government, it's the insatiable, rapacious military-industrial complex. It's not my American brothers and sisters. But there's something to do with our tacit approval and our complacency by not resisting and challenging it also. But understand that you cannot fight a war on 2 fronts, much less 3 fronts. Okay? It's impossible, especially when you have a decrepit military and you have peers. You have one near peer that you're fighting in Iran. You have a peer that you're fighting in Russia, who arguably now has more combat experience in real peer-to-peer war. I'm not talking bullshit. We bomb you with, 100-year advantage in technology planes that you can't see with your radars. I'm not talking about that. Okay, that's the wars that we've been fighting. We get our air support and then we send the guys in to do the mop-up. But this is hardcore war that the Russians have been fighting. They're a peer. China, arguably they're more advanced in the sense, in a quantitative sense, in the very least. So that's why they're bringing back all the gold. They're battening down the hatches. April 2nd is not Liberation Day. I'm sorry to be so didactic, but I'm not. Fuck it. I'm not being sorry anymore. What's the point? Can't be sorry. We're not the same Canada anymore. We can't be the nice, we can't be the nice guys anymore. Nice guys are going to finish last. So fuck it. We're not apologizing anymore. A lot of these B-2 bombers have been active around Yemen. So a lot of them are serving a purpose of bombing Yemen. However, what this also does is induce readiness fatigue for the Iranians. Because now, every time these bombers chart a course towards Yemen, they got to think, are they coming for us, right? And so they have to activate all their air defenses and get everything all ready to go. This is an itinerary of various cargo ships, cargo flights, sending weapons to the Middle East. Now, in terms of what's going on in the Ukrainian-Russian front, there is a lot going on. Norway is restoring its Cold War era military bunkers. I talked about this about a year ago, but the story is now getting more attention. Norway is reactivating Cold War era bunkers. Bardufoss Air Station will protect F-35 jets from drone and missile attacks. The F-35, of course, is a nuclear delivery platform, by housing them inside hardened mountain shelters. Olafsvern Naval Base is being restored to support submarines and naval operations and may host U.S. nuclear submarines. Oh, you mean the United States isn't backing out of NATO? Right, because that's a bunch of bullshit. That's a bunch of good cop, bad cop bullshit. The bunkers are intended to increase the survivability and resilience of Norway's high-value military assets. You know why they're moving all this stuff really close to Russia, right? It's so that they're going to have the option to do a decapitation strike. Because day X, I mean, when the fuse gets lit in the Middle East, all bets are off. This is why China is positioning itself, because this very well could be real world and not an exercise. And everything just flares up. The Russian offensive starts, the Chinese offensive starts, and the Middle East is a powder keg. Could you imagine all of those three things popping off at the exact same time? Oh, people are in for such a rude awakening, man. I'm just going to make a video of me smoking a cigar one day. And I want the trolls to watch every minute of it. NATO members could deploy air and naval forces to Ukraine. Even better than troops. This is worse than troops. They're saying that this might be a substitute, shifting away from the idea of sending ground troops to the country. Yeah, because the effect of ground troops is going to be arguably minimal compared to a no-fly zone and sending naval forces. How they're going to get them in there, I don't know. Maybe they can get them through the Danube, because the Bosphorus Strait in Turkey, isn't there some sort of memorandum that says that you can't send military equipment through? I mean, they will anyways. Turkey's a NATO member, and they're very duplicitous. France and the UK have reportedly proposed sending naval and air forces to Ukraine amid ongoing ceasefire negotiations, the Washington Post wrote on Sunday, citing sources. The two NATO countries are also backing a European-led reassurance force deployed to Ukrainian cities and sites away from the front lines, but which has been met by resistance from other bloc members. And there's lots of infighting within NATO. And before I forget, Maria Le Pen going to jail, this is going to be possibly a declaration of war by Brussels. I mean, how do they know that the person that doesn't replace her is going to be even worse and galvanize that set of ideas even more? Okay? And people are like, oh, this is going to be the party that unifies with the Russians. No! They're going to be more radical, more extreme, more... That's how they're going to get into power. But once they get in and they get taken to the back room, they're going to say, oh, this is how it is and how it is. It's just going to be, Third Reich stuff all over again. That's what it's going to be. And, yeah, that's what NATO is. It's an extension of that. Okay? So, I mean, it doesn't really matter who gets elected. I mean, look at all the corruption. Romania, France now, the lawfare that is pervasive in those regions is astonishing. It's astonishing that people haven't revolted yet, but they will eventually. And so they're going to have to try to mollify the tensions at some point, because it'll get out of control and they'll lose all control. And that's what Russia is hoping for. This is just staggering, though, okay? Since November, when Trump was elected, I mean, look at the amount of drones that Russia has been using in that period of time. And this is the time when Biden authorized deep strikes. You remember that? Look at that. Boom. 4,200 drone strikes. Shahed Iranian drones. Okay, so this is why Trump is pissed. Where are they getting all these drones? I mean, Iran must be an industrial powerhouse. I mean, apparently the Russians have the license to build these things, I think, but are they building them or are the Iranians building them? I mean, who knows? Trump is threatening Russia with new tariffs. So the mask is going to come off soon. And that's going to be the mic drop moment for me, for all those people who said that I had Trump derangement syndrome. I'm just seeing things clearly. You don't understand. Trump is playing the game. He's trying to negotiate with people. He's not Putin's friend. He's not Kim Jong-un's friend. Are you dense? Okay, Russian drones, 5 of them were discovered over an Italian military base today. Okay? Anti-drone systems have detected 5 Russian reconnaissance drones inside Italy in the recent weeks. 5. That's just Italy. Imagine what else they're looking at. There is hybrid warfare currently underway that, you could make many, many James Bond movies about. Shadow fleets. So this is an interesting infographic. So it shows you that the amount of shadow fleet vessels that Russia currently has is 586 oil tankers, okay? Some of these are big-ass oil tankers. Suez Max, 84. Won't get into all the details. Iran has 155. Venezuela has 113. Now, could you imagine if all of this oil got taken off the market? And they're trying to seize these vessels in the Baltic Sea. So this is going to be a potential flashpoint in the Baltics. And the Iranians are doing tit-for-tat embargoes, because I believe there was an Iranian vessel that was recently seized, if I'm not mistaken. I can't remember by who. But so this is going to drive the price of oil up. This is just a very nondescript infographic about the current exercises in China, just to give you some more details about that particular situation. China is launching joint military exercises around Taiwan on April 1st, and this is certainly not an April Fool's joke. I don't think the Chinese celebrate that. Sea-air combat readiness patrols, training to close in on Taiwan from multiple directions, joint seizure of comprehensive superiority, assault on maritime and ground targets, blockade on key areas and sea areas. It is a stern warning and forceful deterrence against Taiwanese independence and separatist forces. Here's what the PLA had to say. This really is the big one. Remember, this is who Pete Hegseth said is the primary adversary of the U.S. empire right now. Announcement of joint exercises around Taiwan from ETC spokesperson Shi Yi. Colonel Shi Yi, spokesperson for the Eastern Theater, said that starting April 1st, the PLA of China, People's Liberation Army, organized the Army, Navy, Air Force, Rocket Army, and other troops in the Eastern Theater and organized ships and aircraft to approach Taiwan Island in various directions around Taiwan. Focus on the training, sea and air combat readiness, police patrols, and comprehensive seizure. Subjects such as control sea-to-land strike in key areas and road closure, and control areas to test the combat ability of the war zone troops in joint operations. This is a serious warning and a strong deterrence against the separatist forces of Taiwan independence, and a necessary action to safeguard national sovereignty and national unity. Now, I think that this is likely just an attempt to deplete Taiwanese defenses and induce readiness fatigue, but you never know, because it seems unlikely that they would do an invasion. I mean, take a look at this. Imagine seeing that on your drive home from work. It seems unlikely that they would do an invasion because the cost would be too high, and it would just ultimately end up in the destruction of these multi-trillion dollar factories that make the fabs, the chips. And so everybody loses. So I don't think they want to do that, but they will try to put a stranglehold on it. They'll try to put an embargo on it. And you'll likely have some sabotage elements within Taiwan try to destroy said facilities. Now, this was in Malaysia. I believe this was a gas pipeline. But, I mean, just take a look at the perfect mushroom cloud, okay? If you've seen that, number one, you'd think, okay, is this a simulation? That's the first thing I'd think. Am I in a simulation? That's what I always think. Like for a split second, then I realize, no, it's reality. Then you would ask yourself, okay, there was no big flash, or at least not one that we've seen on this video. There could have been one. But, I mean, isn't that the perfect mushroom cloud? And fortunately, this was just a gas fire and not a nuclear weapon. Nonetheless, a shocking scene on the skyline for people today in Malaysia, I believe. This is interesting. What's this guy's name? I can't remember what this actor's name is. It's on the tip of my tongue, but when he was a kid, the price of a beefy 5-layer was 90 cents, and now it's $5.36, and I'm guessing, just going out on a limb here, that this one tasted better than this one. It even looks, it's got more color. You know, we were freeze-drying eggs, and we had some eggs from my buddy Dean, who we buy eggs off of because we don't have chickens yet, but we're getting them this year. And the difference between organic, you know, like free-range chickens, eggs, like real free-range, not like fake free-range, like they say in the store. The difference between the color of the eggs is just astonishing. Bright yellow, rich in nutrients, versus this really dull white color. Like it's incredible. So the food, the nutrient deficiency is everywhere in everything. And this is a nepotistic joke, isn't it? I mean, talk about just a multi-level marketing conflict of interest, nepotistic sleazeball display. Trump's sons join new crypto venture right after they talk about a cryptocurrency reserve. I mean, how is this not... I mean, how do people not see through this shit? This is nothing, this is not TDS, guys. And you know what? Even if people think that at this point, you're dumb. If you actually think I have TDS, I criticize Biden every single day. I still do criticize Biden. I criticize the blue-haired menace who wants to breastfeed babies when they have XY chromosomes. I challenge those people all the time. But it doesn't matter because, you know, the end is nigh. Arctic sea ice extent at record lows. You see that? This is why the Russians have been preparing for 20 years with nuclear icebreakers, because they understood the science of it. Okay? There's a science. The Arctic sea ice is melting. That's an undeniable fact. And because it's been so heavily politicized, oh, I don't like carbon tax, therefore this doesn't exist. No, I don't like carbon tax either. I think it's a dumb idea. I think it's not going to yield the result. It's just going to breed more corruption that's ultimately going to create more CO2. It's counterproductive. But that doesn't mean the shit's not happening. I mean, God. I mean, what do the Chinese and the Russians think when you have Elon Musk calling 75% of scientists retards? Literally, on X, 75% of scientists, people who spent their life, I mean, you may not agree with the academic industrial complex in all of its fallible glory, but you got to admit that something's messed up. I mean, imagine Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin looking at this. You know what I'm saying? Look, Sleepy Joe tripping up the stairs to get into his airplane and Mitch McConnell falling asleep. That's no different than this. But it's just we've reached farcical levels of collapse. And that's pretty much what I got for you guys today. So all I can say is keep on prepping. Because, you know, I mean, you better hope I'm crazy. You better hope I'm dumb. Because if I'm not dumb or crazy, oh boy, we got hard times ahead. And for us, as preppers, you know, we're probably going to be as good as we're going to be. especially if you have self-reliant systems. You know, the value of having land and being able to catch rain, the ability to grow food, the ability to raise animals, and to have regenerative stuff that you can't get taxed. Like, you know, a cow can have a calf, a chicken can give you eggs, and they can't tax that. That's, you know, and that's why they want you buying the stuff, because they get to control it, they get to control what goes into it. True freedom at the end of the day and true happiness is self-sufficiency, which is not to say that you can't indulge in the spoils of modern society from time to time. You know, we do that. We got video game systems at home and I play with the kids. I strap on the virtual. My kid was trying to teach me gorilla tag the other day. My God. That lasted about 5 minutes. But you know, we have a little fun now and then. But understand that true freedom, my friends, true freedom is your ability to not need the government, to not need the system. That is true freedom and happiness, ultimately, I believe. And it's not until you get there, and it's not until you experience growing food for yourself and eating it, and yeah, you have to make that upfront initial investment. But when you start to see the returns and the regenerative aspect of it, it's really truly liberating, and there's a certain joy that comes along with it. And I'm just in the initial phases of that. I'm not an expert, not one iota. But, you know, we're finishing up the greenhouse this year. The orchard we got that put in the ground last year. Going to get some chickens. Probably going to get some larger animals. Might not be ready for that this year. But we're going to build out all the infrastructure that's needed for that. We're going to try to do our best to just live a honest and just life. So I encourage you to try to do the same, because it's over. They've lost control. They have completely and utterly lost control. The patients are running the asylum, and no one particular president is to blame. This is something that's been culminating for decades, and we're just now at the tail end of it. These are historic times, so please continue to prepare in any way that you possibly can. It starts off, of course, with taking care of your body, taking care of your mind, and taking care of your emotions. And for some people, your spirit and your community and your friends. That's the big 5 things. Watch the video I released a couple days ago if you want to learn more about that. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, blah, blah, blah.